Shine down over dotted lines of white across an open highway. Restless nights, coffee houses, clubs and neon lights. I rock the people my way, working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, I still see your face. Buses roll, distance grows, but I remember you're just a dream away. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I'll see you in the morning light. Light on as I drive on, singing our song. The light on as I drive on, singing our song. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between.
All right, good evening, folks. Welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. Are you kidding me? I go get all snazzy, Barnes, and there you are for once, not outshining me in the three-piece. I was going to rock this new shirt that came in.
There you go. That's a good one. Yeah, promoting Eric Hunley. I'll be on the Freeform Friday. This matters. Accuracy matters. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
That's right, brother. That's right. That's all that matters
Well,
when it comes down to it.
unless you
right?
work for the New York Times, your name is Nate Cohn.
I'm so glad you want to do this because I pulled up some of Nate's final battleground polls because no, I'm never going to let this go. This pretentious, smug piece of trash has the audacity to call, I assume he's referring to the lot of us, Rasmussen, Robert Cahaley, me, Matt at Insider Advantage, the cheap polls, right? So he's actually bragging, Robert. This is how you know he's from the New York Times. He lives in a cubicle in a place called New York that has lost its damn mind. I love that city until it was taken over by morons like him, and now they ran it into the ground. He's actually bragging that he charges more for a subpar, inferior product. So you're mad at us because we do it better? I mean, and it honestly goes to show you, it was over the black vote that started in the polling in Georgia. It goes to show you that he doesn't, like I told you in 2020, and we talked about a lot, the terminology, the things he says, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a real pollster. So sampling errors for subgroups are higher. And by the way, Sean Trendy himself has tried to tell him and others this over and over. Yes, maybe black voters poll higher in certain polls, but it all shakes out in the end anyway, because guess what? White voters aren't as democratic as they are in the polls. So it all shakes out in the end. Plus, Robert, who really thinks, this is how you know, again, that he's an elitist who never spent a day or a minute or a second in the ghetto in his life. How many people do you think he can reach with his live caller? Hello, this is Nate Cohn polling for the New York Times. How many black urban voters do you think are going to talk to that moron versus whether or not I text them or I digitally target them? And then they'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll take a survey now. Did it ever cross his mind that we're the ones who are actually reflecting closer numbers for minorities? Has it ever dawned on him that that's perhaps what really goes on, and that they have the machine over there that flushes it out for them all the time? And that's, but in the end, like I said, in the end, it works out. But let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we, Robert? Because here's my spreadsheet for the list of the worst pollsters of 2020. And as you can see me highlighting here, in every single battleground state, he is the worst. Every single one, ladies and gentlemen. Iowa, Nate Cohn at the New York Times, Biden 46, Trump 43, okay? Conducted on October 21st, 753 likely voters, plus or minus 3.9. You know what? I'm tempted to just say he's full of crap. He didn't speak to 753 likely voters in Iowa. And I'm really tempted to say that. Look at Ohio. Oh, by the way, if anyone needs reminding, Trump won that state by almost 10 points, about 9 points. New York Times, Siena, Ohio, Robert, Biden plus 5. These are like 15-point misses, dude. Are you kidding me? Wisconsin, Biden plus 11. He won it by 0.2 percentage point. Shall we keep going? Pennsylvania, Biden plus 6. Now that his final was a little bit better there, but that's because you remember that he had another one a few weeks before that you and I viscerally mocked him over because he had Greene County going to Joe Biden. I mean, this is a total joke that you can't get fired if you're him, brother. Right? I mean, I'll toss the ball to you.
Because, I mean, the other thing he was doing by trying to pick on polls he didn't like on the grounds of their the Black Republican vote share is because he also put out big polls that moved the betting markets, that predicted that Democrats are going to win Pennsylvania, that Democrats are going to win Arizona, that Democrats are going to win Georgia, that Democrats are going to be up net 1. They're going to take the Senate. That's what his polls predicted. Now, his headlines tried to tone that down a little bit because he knows how embarrassing that's going to be after Election Day when he turns out to be wrong again. But I was reminding people that, this is a guy who was off by an average of 6 points in 2020 and by double digits in many key swing Midwestern states. He was particularly bad at Florida. I mean, he was bad at Florida. He was bad at Florida in 2018. I mean, so this is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a career pollster. He went into bed with Siena. Siena will produce whatever results he wants. He gets data that is, I think when I looked at it, something like 44 out of 45 New York Times polls under Nate Cohn have inflated the Democratic margin. That's not coincidence at some point. That's deliberate choices he's making to manipulate the outcome, to make Democrats look better than they are. He's a complete joke. He's a complete crock. He's Nate Cohn, the only person who's worse than Nate Cohn at predicting elections is Nate Silver. He's on the same board as, Larry Sabato and Decision Desk and all these other people who should just stay out of predictions because they're bad at it. They're really bad at it. Charlie Cook and the Cook Political Report, really bad at it. These people have been a disgrace. They've been lying all year. And at some point, there has to be a credit to the Real Clear Politics for creating the accountability project. Because one of the worst pollsters again this year is going to be Nate Cohn. He needs to get out of the polling business, quit pretending he knows what he's doing. He doesn't. Quit pretending he knows how to read polls. He doesn't even know how to do that well. He's someone who's I argued with him in 2016 that the Pennsylvania data was wrong because they were inflating upper middle class Philadelphia suburbanites at the expense of working class Pennsylvanians. Got into a big debate with a lefty on this, and the lefty ultimately acknowledged I was right and that Cohn was wrong. So the Cohn's polling is just completely a joke. It's just been a complete joke. The fact that he's got Democrats ahead in all these places, 5-6 points in some cases, all states that he was off by at least 5 points in 2020. At least. I mean, remember he was predicting in 2018, Gilliam's going to win with ease.
6 to 12. High Republican turnout, then he will win by 6. Low Republican turnout, and he will win by 12. I mean, this, and by the way, do you remember in 2020 when I tried and I was being nice and I said, Nate, listen to me. Let's look at what you did in Florida in 2018. Do you remember this? And I got the map. I put up the little dots of everyone he spoke to, where he spoke to them. I said, your independents are the first problem. You're only talking to independents in Democratic urban areas. If you poll around the rest of the state, Nate, you have a geo problem. And that's what is fueling your education problem. And because you're only polling certain areas, you're trying to wait for education to make up for it. But that won't work if you still didn't get a representative sample geographically speaking, because independents, I tried to tell them, in, for instance, Broward County are not going to be the same as independents in Lee County or Monroe County. Or he doesn't
understand the underlying
fired back like a little punk.
Yeah, he doesn't understand the underlying demographics that drive voters, things that Kevin Phillips talked about all the way back in 1968, emerging Republican majority. He doesn't understand those distinctions. He thinks a simplified educational weighting would fix it. Right. And by the way, he still has never fixed the educational weighting. His weighting has still been off. He still doesn't get it right. But there's a big
mode too, Robert. It's his mode. It favors that.
Well, I was going to say that's the second. Yeah, because he and Nate Silver have been pretending for a decade now that phone calling is the magic gold standard of polling. And it's been hogwash now for a long time. By early 2000s, the response rate started to drop to single digits. As soon as that happened, as there's a reason Gallup doesn't poll elections anymore. There's a reason why Pew limits its polling on elections now. It's because both of them had said and were predicting that that method of polling was going to be no longer reliable. And they have not figured out, I mean, USC totally skewed. USC was kind of accurate in 2016. They were attacked in the academy, so they changed their results, and then they got ridiculous results in 2018 and 2020. You have to weight the polls, which means you need to oversample certain groups, and you need to understand which group is which. You need to understand the difference between a college student at Penn or Temple and at a technical community college in the middle of the state. I mean, to his credit, James Carville used to understand Pennsylvania well. Helped Harris Wofford win that big upset in 1991. That got him the gig for Clinton in 1992. That allowed him to write his own check for the rest of his life. Now he lives in the rich folk section of New Orleans that he used to make fun of. He used to say Pennsylvania is Allegheny County and Philadelphia, and in between is the state of Alabama. And that was a good understanding. That if you understood that you could not, even a college-educated voter in the middle of the state will not be like a college-educated voter in Philly. And in the same way, he had, as we documented at the time in 2020, he had a terrible habit of getting the wrong vote. He would find the librarian or school teacher in a rural working class county to poll. It's like you got the one liberal because his mode, as you point out, oversamples liberals, and he knows it. And he still refuses to correct for it, lies to the world and calls it a gold standard. No, when all the evidence has proven to him a long time ago that it's not. And then he's arrogant and condescending to everybody else. And the only reason he has a job at the New York Times is they like the lies that he tells.
It's really coming down to that, Robert, that, and I think all human beings are a little bit guilty of this. We like to believe the lies when it's easier to believe the lie, right? But I am really seeing him, and this is the sad part, because him, CNN, obviously they were coordinating with Democratic strategists. You could see them get ready, tee up these arguments before these polls were released, meaning they knew what CNN was going to hand them. They knew what the New York Times was going to hand them. I'm going to get back to Nate in a second, because I want to explain to people things that he doesn't seem to understand. He polls nationally and he gets an R+4 generic ballot, right? And then he goes and polls. And you know what? Let me drop Pennsylvania for a second and bring this up now before we get off the topic of him, because I want to show people with Pennsylvania that even I may be missing something big, because these people just don't want to talk to us. And I'm going to show them Arizona in a little bit. We got another 300 something people we spoke to tonight. I'm going to show you how educated it is when you call people on the phone, and how obviously Arizona is like 60% non-college degree, ladies and gentlemen. Let me show you. And by the way, Kerry Lake is still ahead in the raw data, and so is Blake Masters now. So if it's 29% post-grad and Blake Masters took a lead, what the hell do you think is happening in Arizona? You could take the Fox poll and stick it up your ass, because I remember last year too having to go through this with you. Remember, we were in the field in Ohio. Do you remember that? And they dropped a Biden +5. And I'm like, oh my God, Robert, look at the raw data. Trump was up big in the raw data. But this is what Nate Cohen does. He doesn't understand the difference between subgroups. It's easier to poll nationally, folks. If you're not even that good of a pollster like Nate Cohen, you could still catch national shifts which lead the states. When they lead the battleground states, it is harder to poll a battleground state, or any state for that matter, because you're dealing now with smaller samples, smaller subsamples for other groups, for subgroups, and the error rate begins to get higher. So that's why at Big Data Poll, we always have had minimum sample sizes, and that depends on state, the diversification, state population, the diversification of that population. It's not just a simple thing like, well, if Florida's 14 million, so we need 800 or more to have a +or-3 or better, you know, it's more than that. If you do what Nate does, you're going to reach the Puerto Rican voter outside of Kissimmee, and you're going to completely miss the Venezuelan on the Space Coast or in Miami-Dade. You're going to completely miss them.
Well, remember how badly he missed Miami-Dade in 2020.
Oh, my God. Hell's bells.
That's a classic example. He's just somebody.
They made fun of me, Robert. Look at his margin in Miami. He's got Trump in the 40s in Miami. Remember that?
Yeah,
mocking back and forth on Twitter. So cute. Look, that must be that silly online sample bias. I remember him saying that. That's that online sample bias for you. Okay. And by the way, it wasn't only online. We're a mixed mode survey. But this is why he can get an R+4, which is something you pointed out on Twitter. An R+4 is not a small Republican win. It means it's going to be very bad for Democrats. And because
it's an 8-point swing. It's an 8-point
swing. It's going to be a
blow. It means you need Biden to have won that district by 9 or 10 points. This, by the way, is a district that I put out the best bets.
I saw it
at sports.
It's in the chat too.
Yeah, at sportspicks.locals.com. We'll go through some of them tonight too. Of course, if you took the bets that we were giving out all year, you've already made money. You could cash in right now and
you could cash in right now on Adam Laxalt. Now.
Laxalt, Blake Masters, Herschel Walker, any of these governors, pretty much any race, because Republican odds have improved across the board, as we said they would. But
Emerson
right now in the betting market,
+6 or something, man.
Because of this bad poll that came out, this latest poll that came out, you know that right now David's is a big favorite in this district, and I'm like,
Robert, that's what I'm pointing out. This is because of his poll and his poll alone. The guys at Remington must be like, what? Because they're polling this district. I know they're giving polling data to the NRCC over it. This is a Biden 52. Actually, it says right there. Biden. Yeah, I was right anyway. Biden 52%, Trump almost 48%. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's an R+4 electorate, this district is gone. Yeah, completely gone. Called on election.
What was the lead? What was the lead according to Nate Cohn?
14 points, Robert. Dem +14. This is insane.
How do you not realize right away you have to pocket that poll, because that you got a bad result. You got either an outlier result, you didn't do something right, or 1 out of 20 polls should be a wacky result. That's the nature of polling. You cannot publish that poll. I mean, this is going to be humiliating on election night when she loses. I mean, he said he's going to win by 14 points. I mean, it'll be worse than. By the way, have you noticed he's quit polling Wisconsin and Ohio?
Yep.
Because he
Nothing.
got so embarrassed by those two states, especially, and Iowa. All of a sudden, he doesn't can't get around to pulling
He
those
doesn't want
states
to touch
now.
the Rust Belt at all. He's in the Sun Belt. He really barely doesn't
Just
touching
Pennsylvania.
Rust.
Pennsylvania's the only
That's
state
it.
he's still pretending he can pull.
And it's unbelievable that
And he was wrong by
even
6 points in Arizona and 6 points in Nevada. He was wrong in all these states.
we'll go over what we found in Pennsylvania, but to try to compare his polling to mine is just not even legit. It's not even a
No,
legit.
the
Not
guy's not
just
a
me.
pollster. He's a
Not
fake
just
New
Lee.
York Times BS artist who helps propagate a bunch of garbage by being a baseball nerd who is bad at baseball analysis and bad at sports betting, just like his pal Nate Silver. I mean,
That's where these guys come from. That's really
I mean,
where they come from.
they're
But
baseball
without
nerds.
Barack Obama,
You know, they're little
given
baseball nerds. I mean, I won't get into certain stereotypes, but they're your classic baseball who think they're super smart and super special when they're not. They never were. I mean, they never were super smart. They never were super special. They're the kind of people casinos can't wait for them to walk in because they're just going to rob them blind. Because, I mean, you know, that's who these people are. And anybody that's in the sports betting world could see these guys for the hoaxers they are. When Nate Silver tried to enter that with his deal with ESPN, everybody in the sports betting community laughed. They're like, that guy's a joke. That guy's a crock. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea.
If it wasn't for Dave Bluff giving
ESPN had to fire him because of how bad he was. He kept predicting everything wrong. It was, you made money if you bet against him. That's how it is with politics too with both these guys. So everybody remember, according to Nate Cohn and Nate Silver, you should be betting for the Democrats to take the Senate, Democrats to hold the House, Democrats to win seats like Kansas 3, Democrats to win Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada, all of those states. Watch them be, if you bet with them once again, I've tracked it over time, every single election cycle, if you bet with these guys, you lost money.
This is a screenshot that Tom Bevan took from the NBC poll today, which, by the way, this poll in the last pro-GOP midterm had a tie, and Republicans won the House vote by over 5 points. All right. This time, they have a 2-point lead. And if you really read the article, which I think I will, I think I'm going to go back and actually read, or here's actually a comment. I can pull it up here, but this is what the GOP shift in its favor amongst GOP has seen a shift in its favor among several groups, including Latino voters and women, particularly
Latino
white
voters,
suburban
we've been
women.
talking about that goes all the way back to 2020, 2019.
They can't pretend like this is an original
They just
thought
caught
or
it,
something.
is what it is. They're finally
They just caught it.
Yeah.
That's right. They just caught it. Exactly. This group, the suburban white woman, 20% of the electorate at least.
I thought they all love abortion. I thought they're all a bunch of baby killers.
I want to read. That's exactly.
To line up on the abortion issue, right? Well,
that's exactly what I want to read, brother.
That's
exactly 26-point shift in the favor of Republicans. And actually, I want to read. They timed me out. Let me just put my creds in because I do have creds for the Wall Street Journal. But I'm going to read what people said, what this woman she says, I'll vote Republican. She's in Pittsburgh, which is Allegheny County. It's very important. She said, I'll vote Republican and I'm pro-choice, or at least I would like people to have access at some point to abortion. She's like, but and she was going to vote for John Fetterman. She just changed her mind. Okay. And this is important. Very, very important. And instead, she said now, Cranberry Township, right outside of Pittsburgh. She noticed her kids' clothes getting more expensive, as well as rising prices for milk and other grocery staples. Quote, the Dems have kind of proved that they haven't been able to make a change with inflation. It's just gotten worse in the last couple of years. She's 39. She does lean, Republican, but she was going to vote for Fetterman in the Senate contest. She says she's still undecided, but now leaning to Oz, she's going to vote for Oz, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Yeah. While I would want to support the right for a woman to choose, I also want to support our economy getting better because it's not right now. Give the Republicans a chance in Congress, see what they can do. This is a textbook swing voter. They are based on results. They're not voting on the election like some of you may be. Like, look, I need to vote straight R or D to save the country for whatever your reason is. That's not this woman. And this is the woman who swings Pennsylvania. This is the woman who got Trump at 42 in Allegheny, yet in 2020, barring what Barnes and I have talked about ad nauseum, he slipped below 40. But that's the woman who will do it. She also just on and on about inflation. And abortion was an afterthought. Then they go in to talk about the shift with Hispanic voters. Here's why I've been pushing this idea, Robert, that if the right track, wrong track starts to go in the wrong direction, Biden's approval doesn't get back anywhere near where it was, then they're going to be in deep trouble. Because look at this trend. They had bigger leads for Republicans, as we all did. But even when some polls were having 8 to 12 point leads for Republicans, this poll still, the biggest lead was only 5 points. So understand this R+2 right now in their trend is going, it's a reverting back to the pre-summer environment, which means it's still growing. Believe me, in the final week, because I'm looking at Pennsylvania, Nevada, our poll will be out real soon. I'm just going to break it to you. We have Laxalt up by 3, Lombardo up by 5, and we're being conservative. All right. Wisconsin is over. It's over. There is no more vote, like I said, for the Dems to try to convince. That's a wrap. Listen to what because this is a supposed, what's the word, Robert? Bipartisan poll. I mean, these bipartisan polls are jokes. Tony Fabrizio is the Republican and Anzalone is the Democrat. I wouldn't want a bipartisan poll with anybody because I don't want them telling me how the hell I should weight my poll and not. But this is what the Democrats said. The most concerning matter for Democrats is that independent voters don't trust the party to handle rising prices. Whichever party is in power, he said, finds that independent voters, quote, break against the party when you have economic diagnostics like we're seeing. End of story. Done. Voters trust the Republicans on that right now, and that's tough sledding for us. He's trying to nicely tell Democrats they're going to get their ass kicked.
Well, I get bombarded with Democratic ads here in Nevada, and they chose to run on abortion and, a little bit of climate change and oil.
Yeah.
And it's like, and, throwing some January 6th from a news narrative perspective. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about those issues. Independent voters don't care about January 6th. They don't care about climate change. They don't care about, to the degree they care about it, they care about having affordable diesel prices for winter heat. That's what they care about. I mean, that might, help swing New Hampshire. So by itself, that kind of issue, late breaking like that, they don't care. And abortion was we said it from day one. It was not going to be a Democratic winner. In fact, it would ultimately be a net Republican winner because of who really votes on it, who's really committed to it. They weren't going to add to pad the Democratic role. And then I've seen all these fake reports from people trying to pretend the early voting date is good for Democrats. It is terrible.
Oh my God.
For Democrats. It is terrible.
Horrible.
You're talking about it's almost 70% less than it was in 2020. And that's the standard because we didn't have mass mail-in balloting in 2018. We had early voting and some other stuff, but not like we did in 2020. 2020 set the standard. So that's your metric. How much the way they substituted for their turnout problem in 2020 was mass mail-in balloting. And some of that, as we've noted, you can put an asterisk by how many of those people actually voted. But, that's another story for another day. But for 2022, if they were going to pull this off again, they needed to have mass mail-in balloting. In some states, North Carolina, some other states, it's down as much as 90%.
It's the worst they've ever done, Robert.
Completely. African-American turnout is abysmal in key swing states like Georgia, like North Carolina, which is always a sign. Youth vote is down. Which is another bad sign. All the Democratic demographic voting groups are down. And people even Ralston, who's trying to pretend there's still a firewall, is realizing, it's not good.
Attack. Yeah, he says, the first tweet said, mail update for Clark didn't do a lot for Dems, added about 10K overall ballots. Clark firewall is at 21K. That's under 8% and under the Dem 9.6% regular lead. The GOP must be happy. And then he quote tweets because he gets blowback from his Democratic followers. And he says, for those wondering, I just confirmed that there is no backlog of mail waiting to be processed. Meanwhile, they're saying, there's going to be more coming in. There's going to be more. Go look at the replies, folks, and you'll see what people are saying to him. You didn't get it all. You didn't get it all. And he's saying, it's done. It's not coming. Just like in Arizona. It's closed, Robert. It's done. They did not get the numbers they needed. Or if Fox News, with the poll they released tonight, their polls suck in Arizona. So that's a good poll for Blake and Kari Lake. But the bottom line is, look inside their numbers. They're expecting more early vote, and it's not coming. Don't they understand the numbers are there right now? So he says, no massive Clark mail as in 2020. As I have said, this is an apple. Other cycles are oranges. That's his nice way of saying it's not coming, guys. We didn't get it. We
Right.
didn't
Oh, exactly.
get it.
Exactly. I mean, and if they can't get it in Nevada, they're not going to get it anywhere. And so
That's right.
you track the details. You dig into even Michael McDonald, Elect Project, a hardcore
Yes,
lefty.
that's my alma mater. That's
Yeah,
my alma mater.
who pretends to be independent, which is what annoys me the most. It's like, just admit you're a
He is
political hack.
not. He is a
Yeah, he's a
radical
lefty hack.
liberal. I
But even
know.
he
I went
said
to school
Florida's a
there.
complete disaster for
It's a
Democrats.
blowout.
Yeah, I mean, Miami-Dade is about to have net Republican voting behavior.
Robert, Miami-Dade's going. I told everybody this. If it wasn't going to go this year, it was definitely going to go if Trump is the nominee in 2024. Well, folks, it's going this year. Look at the numbers. And there are always these mass numbers of Hispanic voters who like to vote on election day. These are super conservative Cubans and Venezuelans. Right now, what we're seeing is some of that, but really just largely partisan whites, because that's all that's left for Democrats in South Florida. White liberals, secular Jews in Miami, that's what's left for their vote. The rest of it, their coalition, and of course African Americans, but their coalition, the one they used to have put together of Latinos and the souls to the polls early voters and the secular white liberals of all no denomination or Jewish denomination. That is all they have at this point, because 2 out of the 3 legs on their stool are broken. They're not coming. And actually, what's worse, Robert, is that with the Hispanics, and I imagine, I suspect too, some of these younger black men, not only are they not going to get the turnout they need among these groups, but some of them are going to turn out and they're going to vote against them. And I that is going to happen in Miami.
It's kind of what Cone misses also on, like, he really tracks black voters by urban poor black precincts.
That's it. That's what he thinks a black voter is. That's what he thinks he is, because he's a white liberal from New York who lives in New York City. He doesn't realize in Georgia there are massive numbers of conservative blacks in rural and suburban areas, and they are not. George, look at how George W. Bush did in Georgia with black voters.
Geographically, your more conservative or independent black voter is less likely to live in a poor urban black precinct.
That's exactly right.
Because that's the business class, that's the working middle class, that's et cetera. People don't necessarily work for the government, but work for independent business, so on and so forth. And so that's where getting an accurate number of what actually the black vote as a whole group does is difficult, because the only groups that you get to measure are the poor urban black precincts that are all black precincts. And that's not the best way to measure the entirety of the black vote, which he just denies exists. But the fact that the Democratic core when they do well, they're getting really high turnout in the early vote. Places like North Carolina, places like Louisiana, both of those states,
Pennsylvania.
We got good track records.
In Pennsylvania, they're outvoting, but it's not as big as it was in 2020, Robert. They have Democrats in 2020 at a just over 4-1 advantage. It is not even 3.5 to 1 at this point. Right. So they're down. And let me just show you this, because
the vote volume is also down. Because Republicans are going to turn out on election day. That's happening.
They are. So, that's what I want to show you.
They're kind of praying that a bunch of Democrats, young and minority Democrats especially, but that a bunch of Democrats are going to turn out on election day and vote in person. When, because of 2020, if they were going to vote, they would have voted by mail already.
Here is Pennsylvania. And here's how are you going to vote? Certain to vote and already voted. About half the Democratic Party. That's it. Like, what's in the bank right now is over half their vote. And it's almost coming to an end. That's all right. Republicans, 84%. 84%. And where independents? 70. This vote is going to be very big for Mehmet Oz on election day, and Mastriano, which is something I want to show you, because these polls with Mastriano are really angering me. Yes, we found Mastriano trailing Oz. There was about a 6-point gap, but this is why I think that if there's a miss this year, one of the bigger misses will be surrounding specifically Doug Mastriano, because if you look, and I'll zoom in for you guys, I know you always hate it when you can't see it that well, but here is by region. All right. And look, I am the first person to admit when I think there's something going on. I think I missed a good chunk of the working class vote, especially in Dutch country. We separate Dutch, the area called Dutch, from the southeast of Pennsylvania, unlike Nate Cohen, who stumps them all in together. All right. Because Montgomery and Delaware are not Lancaster or York. All right. Or these other areas. That is Dutch country. These are extremely hard to reach voters. And as you can see, Oz has barely leads in Dutch. Mastriano is actually a little bit down. That's a response bias, folks. That is not going to happen. Donald Trump carried Dutch by like 16 points, something like that. The Republicans will do extremely well there. By the way, look at how Mehmet Oz is doing in some of these liberal areas. I mean, in Southeast, he's going to win. I mean, he is going to win. He's doing well in Philadelphia, which I have a client out there, and he's like, believe me, dude, this is real. I did an event with him the other day. He couldn't even walk down the street in Philadelphia. He was swamped. The phenomena that is Oz and Allegheny and Philadelphia is like a real thing. They love him because it's part of it is celebrity, Robert. Part of it is celebrity. And then also, debates can be overstated. This time, the debate mattered because so many people watched it. 63.4% watched the debate when we had polled, and just about the same amount said that Mehmet Oz won. The responses, the things that people were saying. There was one woman who was in Lackawanna, and she was like, look, I actually was going to vote for Fetterman because I like on labor stuff. She's like, but I can't vote for a man who can't speak. She's like, I can't do that.
I said Uncle Festerman. Nobody's voting Uncle Festerman to the Senate. You can feel bad for Uncle Festerman. You can think Uncle Festerman, has some poor health issues, whatever. You're not putting him to the Senate. You're not sending him to the Senate.
That's how she was. Yes. This is like, I just can't. I cannot. It's not okay for him to be the senator from Pennsylvania. I can't do it to myself.
Nobody wants a senator like that. It's not like special ed is not the grounds to send people to the U.S. Senate. It just isn't. God bless. I get people have issues, but that was never going to happen. And
honestly,
people are like, well,
I'm glad.
You shouldn't be critical of his looks and so forth. It matters in politics. It has always mattered in politics. You can't look like the hunchback in Notre Dame and be running and always be wearing these weird hoodies, and people think you're a U.S. senator. It's just not going to happen.
I saw a meme of Biden breaking out of his neck. It was horrible. Yeah. I said, oh my God. First of all, it was really well done. But I'm like, oh God. Like, if it was me, I would want someone in my family to say, Rich, no. Dad, we're not letting you do this to yourself, Dad, or the family for that matter. You are not going to embarrass us like this. But you know why his wife doesn't give a crap, Robert? Because she's on the short list if Shapiro wins to be picked to replace him. Because here's a little secret,
by the way,
everybody.
Exactly what Democrats
John Fetterman is not that. That's right. John Fetterman is not going to be a U.S. senator. That's right. And why the media is so disgustingly corrupt that they don't tell the voter who has every right to know this, Robert. So we'll do it. Everybody listening, understand that Democrats have no intention of letting John Fetterman run in this, serve in the Senate. He'll be there for as long as he needs to be sworn in and actually serve as the role. And then he will step down. He will be replaced by his radical left, crazy Marxist wife or somebody else that they have lined up. It's now down to 2 people. And by the way, Democrats have put spouses in lieu of it's happened before. So if you think that, they wouldn't put his wife in, yes, they will. Yes, they will. Because they did it in Michigan. It's happened. And by the way, that woman was a permanent fixture after they did that because her husband had such a good name. And then and she was nuts. She was nothing like her husband. She was crazy, but she was the widow and the replacement. So she got the fake crocodile tear vote, the Hillary Clinton, New Hampshire vote. Speaking of New Hampshire, let's pull it up. The Senate map. Yesterday moved. New Hampshire
ended up going for Biden by 10 or something. That's in my head for some reason.
Yes.
That's the thing I can't get past. I'm like, that's my hurdle with trusting that New Hampshire will vote Republican for the Senate.
Well, let's think of it like this. He won the popular vote by 4. That NBC poll, somebody I just want to point out because they were like, is that registered or likely? That's registered voters. They didn't implement the likely voter model, which would have pushed it to at least R +4 or 6 because of the difference between interest. That's how Fabrizio and Anzalone would have done it. They asked about how enthusiastic people were, how certain they were to vote, and their interest in the election. You could tell. That's their likely voter model. For some reason, Robert, we got the register voter results. They asked every question imaginable for a likely voter model, but yet for a likely voter screen. Yet we didn't get a likely voter sample, did we? So that tells me it's closer to Monmouth. We're at R+5 with our likely voter model, and they were about
right. So I see. So then New Hampshire's a toss up. New Hampshire's even if you have a plus. You have a +6 Democratic
51% right now.
If it's
on our
5
model.
or so Republicans, and if there's enough
51,
suburbanites unhappy with the incumbent, unhappy with Biden, that might be enough.
Yeah, let me tell you what's doing it. Let me tell you what's doing, because we're at 51%. The Anselm College poll, the generic ballot polling, they're all, what I think is so important about the Anselm College is that they are confirming now at the state level what everybody had been seeing, starting with our generic ballot at the national level, which is this break of even college-educated independents and suburban women. And in a place like New Hampshire, there's a ton of these suburbanites that are in Nashua, that are in Manchester. And if they are really moving like that, it's going to help Republicans at the Senate level and, of course, in Congress. So you would think Leavitt is ahead. Pappas was crying last week or 2 weeks ago, saying our polling in New Hampshire 1 is now dead on. About 4 days later, Leavitt had polling that people seen. I don't think she released it, but a lot of us saw it. And it showed she had pulled ahead. And it was this big break, man, among independent women. Just boom, I'm going to Leavitt. And Pappas, his favorables went even more underwater. The Anselm College poll reflects that. Also, Some of these numbers in here, no incumbent wins with these numbers, Robert. Give me a second. Let me pull this up real quick. No incumbent wins with this. I mean, it just doesn't happen. Here we go. 5% of voters identified as swing voters in New Hampshire think the country is headed in the right direction. 5%. 80% of independents think it's off on the wrong track. 18% had a favorable view of Biden. Only 3% had a favorable view of Biden. Her negatives, Hassan's negatives, they went from, it's loading up. I mean, they went really, really bad. Okay. So her favorable now is 45.54, and it was only -3 last month, 48.51. Pappas's fell from 47.48 to 44.51. No, incumbents don't survive this stuff, guys. They don't. And with the right track, wrong track that bad, I don't.
I mean, I
think Bolduc's
for the Senate, I think Bolduc is at like 3-1. I mean, he's still a big underdog in New Hampshire.
Is he right now? Still, let's check it out.
Yeah, you could look up Predicted, see what it is. I know it's some of the other betting markets he is, and Predicted, I think it's at least 2-1.
Wow, at this point, it's not even a question of who will win the Senate. Let me show this to people on Predicted. It's not even a question of who will win it. It's like how many seats the Republicans going to get, right?
Oh, yeah.
They just Nate Cohn's polling did move.
All the betting odds markets have shifted in the direction that we predicted now for months. But yeah, see, look at where do they have in New Hampshire? Man. Is it 60?
60.
All the way down to
she's
60.
down 12.
Wow. So people are trading because of probably the St. Anselm poll poured money in. But you're saying that's still pretty good odds at 40% for the Republican.
Yeah, I'm telling you that at this point we have them at 51%, 51% likely to win. So, and I think that's going to grow because there hasn't been some generic ballot factoring in yet. Just it's about, I don't know, a day behind, maybe a little over a day behind. So our polling always matters. So when I see it, I'm going to show people Arizona in a second here. I see
how
it,
Democratic was Maine in 20 for Biden? Was it 8, 9?
Maine, I want to say it was 8. Let's look.
I mean, I would say that means LePage, who at some places is like, there's some betting markets you can get LePage to win the governorship at like 8-1.
It was 7 points. Oh no, 9 points. It was 9 points. So
right. So if you're talking about
LePage in striking distance, bro,
absolutely,
it does.
No question. And
he's done it before.
Not be
he's won statewide office before.
Oh,
Robert.
exactly. And he was a very popular, successful governor. I mean, it was kind of why Lula held on in Brazil, was because during his tenure, the
You
economy in
think that's
Brazil
what it
was
was?
good. Well, there are other things too. I mean, but benefits. But what Lula had was like kind of imagine a Bernie Sanders who had been successful in the past, and that's kind of. But Brazil's gonna might dissolve into open civil war because
It's teetering,
the real
bro. It
problem
is.
is there's not a big difference between Lula and Bolsonaro on foreign policy. Lula imagines himself a great foreign leader a little bit more than
Yeah.
Bolsonaro.
He's a little
Bolsonaro is more of a
delusional, I think.
nationalist. But
Yeah.
the big difference was domestically. Lula was seen as more protective of the drug dealers, the gangs, the prisoners. That's why they're all celebrating. And that's why it's all falling apart. The crime problem in Brazil is what got Bolsonaro in the first time. Brazil could easily devolve into open inter-warfare because you have massive regional gaps. I think Lula only won one big.
He only
won
won
state
one
big.
region. That's it.
One region
Yeah.
very big. It's the heart of the drug trade in Brazil. It's the heart of gang activity
is.
in Brazil. And you have police and truckers and others. And my one criticism of Bolsonaro, there were people connected to Bolsonaro that were connected to the old military junta and had more authoritarian streaks. But so
Yeah,
what you
Maine's
do is
not done for some reason, but
Yeah.
just to let you know, the projection's not done yet. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
so he's at 4-1, 5-1 on Predict It. You can get him at 8-1 at other betting markets. Bet Online has one. Polymarket has one. Bovada has one. Betfair has some. So I think no one's paying. It's always weird. And for Maine too, he was a big underdog. Now he's a slight underdog, but he's still a slight underdog. Didn't Trump still win that district?
Yes, he did by 8 points.
How in the world? I
points.
mean, that would mean you're
Let's
talking
go
about
to-
something like a plus 16 Maine 2 on a national level, plus 16 Republican environment, and he's going to lose. I don't see that.
Okay,
They don't
so I
have
guess
Maine
it doesn't
2 on
do it like
Predicted.
that.
It's on other.
They don't. Okay.
Yeah, Predict It doesn't, but other. And the only reason why Predict It doesn't is here's an interesting fact: the Biden administration shut down Predict It's ability to add markets. And so they're now litigating the issue because they're claiming that somehow this is a commodities market. I mean, but it's kind of convenient. They did it at the time when they would normally be expanding the markets and you'd get a lot more intel and information because the political betting markets provide their own intel and information if something squirrely or something interesting is going on. And the Biden administration tried to prevent them all. And so that's where the market shifted to offshore sports books, the UK-based books. I think Polymarket is a Bitcoin-funded book or funded betting instrument. It has its own disputes with the CFTC. But, all of these have moved in the Republican direction. I mean, the Senate, which was but what's amazing is, according to Nate Silver, pretty much for every day for the last 4 months, his odds said Democrats had a better chance than Predicted did. So
That's
that meant
right.
He would, so when I say bet on Nate Silver, I mean when there's a disparity between what he says the odds are versus what the betting markets are. If you did that, every election cycle, you would have lost money. Every single one. I mean, the guy's just been a loser, consistent loser. Of an extraordinary state.
You and I for months have been saying this is what he will do. I think it was like the first What Are the Odds where we went over the history of how these forecasters change their ratings. Not a week or 2 weeks. They start to move them, but they inch them along. Like Nate Silver is notorious for inching it little by little. And then somebody on Twitter today was like, that's ridiculous. It's a model based on polling. And of course you would expect it as the polling tightens. And no, dude, you're being bamboozled, hoodwinked. Just like, let me quote Malcolm X here for a second. You're being bamboozled, hoodwinked, tore up by the white liberal. Okay,
if you have an accurate,
it's not a model.
Exactly. Well, if it was a model, it should incorporate the fact that the polls are consistently certain data that you're relying upon is consistently wrong in the favor of one party. Which he pretends isn't the case. I mean, so that's that means you have a bad model. Bad model is bad input creates bad output, and that's Nate Silver. Also, I have doubts because it's clear he manipulates the model routinely.
Yeah,
so
I mean, honestly, Robert, don't you think he really just serves a function? Honestly, he's
he's a Democratic hack there to promote him. He got lucky, really lucky, that Obama won for the reasons he was wrong about the reasons. Right? This is like analyzing a football
in 2012,
game.
in 2012,
It's like
Yep.
analyzing a football game. You say so and so is going to run all over so and so, and that's why I think they're going to win. And it turns
Yeah.
out that's terrible analysis. And
They passed on
instead
that.
they're a great passing team, and that's why they win. And then you still trade credit as if you're a super genius, and he wasn't. I mean, because I followed at the time, I bet on Obama, but for completely opposite reasons that he was saying. He was saying things about. He was saying registered voter polls are more accurate than likely voter polls. People forget the dumb stuff he said during that.
Yep, that he said.
2012
Yep.
about how I was predicting. It's like, no, it's very simple. First black guy to ever be president, a bunch of black voters are going to turn out and vote for him to keep him in. That goes back through American political history. First black mayor, first black congressman, first black senator, first black governor, whoever that is, when they're up for re-election, massive black loyalty turns out for the polls. Now, it doesn't keep happening. It just happens that one time. But you knew it was going to happen. And then you saw Romney. He was a dope and he was a rube and he wasn't going to play well in middle America. And so all you do is combine those two and be like, yeah, I didn't pay attention to the polls. Like Obama's going to win despite the fact people don't like his policies. They like him. And Romney was not a viable alternative. But all of Silver's analysis was terrible. This is also the same guy who says he's right no matter what. If he says there's a 20% chance of something happening and it happened and that event happens, he goes, well, I said there was a 20% chance. If he says it's an 80% chance of happening, it happens, says, see, I predicted it all along. The guy's a fraud. I mean, the guy's not someone to take seriously. Nate Cohn is a fraud, not someone to take seriously. A decision desk is not someone that they should stay out of the prediction business. Count ballots, get your ballot reporting.
I was just going to say, we love them for results. They should have just stuck to that.
Just stick with that.
Because
don't try to predict things. Don't do YouTube videos that are going to be embarrassing 6 months from now. You're going to have to delete. You're going to have to start going through and like delete every
you can go
one.
back and find I want to say it was during the New York special election, because we all talk, but then they had their stream up. And the one guy definitely said it publicly, what he had been saying privately, which is that don't worry about the polls in North Carolina. Nobody here thinks that Sherry Beasley has a chance in hell. Bud's going to win that race by 5 or more. That's what everybody thinks. Yet their model said something totally different, Robert. And they just tweeted last week something that I had to not even attack them on, just dispute it. And they said that while Ted Budd is slightly favored, this is still a toss-up because Sherry Beasley has continued to outperform expectations in the polls and in fundraising. And neither one of those statements are true. The truth is that polling has been wrong in North Carolina for 10 years. 10 freaking years. So if Sherry Beasley was outperforming expectations, right? That's what I'm saying in what you just said about being, a true model. You would be factoring in the predictive value of all your variables. That's what a real model does. And looking at North Carolina, perfect example. Sherry Beasley's trailing Ted Budd. No other Democratic candidate for president or for Senate had been trailing the Republican opponent in that state. And yet they lost. Cal Cunningham had a freaking 10-point lead, Robert. By the way, Nate Cohen, Cal Cunningham plus 10. All right. Tom Tillis won it. All right. So, I mean, it's just so freaking laughable. I think he did herd to like a 3 or 5 at the end. But nevertheless, he had Hillary Clinton winning that state by 6 points. He had Joe Biden winning that state by 7. Neither one of those things happened. But he wasn't alone. So Sherry Beasley isn't outperforming if she's down already, Robert. She's underperforming historically. And then as far as the money, as far as the fundraising claim, no Democratic candidate has been at a spending deficit in that election, in that state for the last 4 cycles. So I don't know what the hell, even A.B. Stoddard, talking on the podcast for RCP, had been saying that North Carolina, South Carolina, even with Lindsey Graham, bad polling led to Democrats getting hundreds of millions of dollars from donors, which they spent thinking that these races would be close, and they got stumped. Even though their polling showed it's a dead heat in South Carolina. It's a dead heat.
What do you think the odds are in New York for the governor's race? Because that's another state that's so Democratic.
We do still have that. Yeah, we have that leaning Democrat. We do. Ironically, though, it's leaning more Democrat than Pennsylvania, and that's the impact of crappy public polling. But it's also what's his name, Lee Zeldin, has raised money. Doug Mastriano has not. and that's hurting him bad in the predictions. So people, because I got several comments like, "Hey man, how could your model at Pennsylvania a little lighter, darker blue than New York?" Zeldin is actually leading in some polls, whether or not you believe them or not. Mastriano is not. That's number one. But for us, the poll's not that big of a deal. What is big is, again, this demographic voting pattern is kind of working against Mastriano in some places in Pennsylvania, where it's working in Zeldin's favor in some places in New York. And also Zeldin has money. He's been up on the air. He's been hammering ads constantly. He's, it's amazing that somebody who is running for the governor of New York as a Republican has been able to raise money because he's in, I'm not saying he's establishment. What I'm saying is he doesn't turn off the establishment like Mastriano does. It goes to show you that when they turn the spigot off on you, there's nothing flowing. And Mastriano has been hurt really badly. So it's down to 52%. That's got to be the Trafalgar poll. It's got to be. But there's two polls now where Zeldin is ahead too. And I've seen their internals. So I know it really is close. Very, very close.
And is that because, so which section of the state might really break? So New York was what, plus 25 for Biden?
Dude, yeah, almost 30, right? Almost 30. Let me look real quick. Yeah, let me look real quick. But interestingly, it is funny because Zeldin is, and it's not just one, it's not one poll. It's like every damn poll. Zeldin is doing so well in the 5 boroughs. Even in the Quinnipiac poll, he was almost at 40% in the 5 boroughs. It was 23 points for Biden, New York. But if you look at Trump's performance, he got a ton of votes in Westchester, Rockland, Nassau. It's just that in Queens, he also got more votes than he did last time. Even in the Bronx, in Kings, he got 202, almost 203,000 votes. Most Republicans get like 90,000 votes. That's it. So he really did do very well there. But Trump only won Suffolk County, by like 1 point, and he lost Nassau by 10. If the polling is accurate, not only is Lee Zeldin going to win Suffolk County by a pretty significant margin, he's going to win Nassau too, Robert, because that's within that 10, 12 point shift, that dynamic we've seen from New Jersey to Virginia to pre-Dobbs specials, even in some specials after Dobbs. There are areas like Dutchess where Molinaro swung it significantly. So it's doable. And if the sampling errors are off just like a little, like, and for instance, if I show people the map, it'll because let me get the county by county real results for 2020 and we'll compare it real quick. This is a big, this is where his votes are going to come.
Is this a New York City suburban phenomenon where they're unhappy?
There's a little bit of a lot going on here. There is. Like Clinton County in the north is still Democratic area. So is Essex, but it used to be Republican, and it got more under Trump. It got more Democratic. There's pretty decent amount of votes here. 35,000 here, 20,000 there. As a Republican, you can't afford to lose these areas. You got to kind of rack it up here. Trump only won the areas that surrounded. He lost these two by a few points. Zeldin's ahead by like 15 up here. So and that goes, that's going to cut across Lawrence. It means he's going to do so much better in St. Lawrence and Franklin County. And that's not where all the votes are. The big issue is Suffolk here, where there's almost 800,000 votes, 750,000 votes. There won't be in a midterm. But again, Trump barely won it. This is Zeldin's backyard, and he is killing it here. He could win it by like 10 or more. And if he does, oh boy, he'll win Nassau probably. I really think he's going to. It's going to be a little bit. It's not going to be like Suffolk. But if we see that 10-point swing, it puts him right on the line of eking it out. But again, Kings and Queens, Trump's at like 27% in Queens. He's at 22% in Kings. And in the Bronx, he's at 16%. Zeldin's doing like 30s.
Right.
And that is
New York. Well,
it's a Rudy
across New York, but
Giuliani.
it's a New York City phenomenon of not being happy with Democratic leadership.
It's across, it definitely is across New York, all the way. There's something
to be
said about it.
Portland,
but all those
might be like
votes
Portland,
there.
Oregon. It might be a specific urban reaction to the areas where things have gone insane in terms of crime, in terms of certain woke aspects that translated into that, immigration issues, etc. That I mean, because that's what they said in Portland. You had a bunch of Portland Democrats saying they're going to vote Republican because they said things have just got too chaotic. To these real Antifa, BLM, riot-driven places didn't only saw a little bit in 2020 impact. You may see more of it in 2022.
Yeah, and he's probably outside of. I mean, I can foresee Schenectady only being a few points, but outside of Albany itself, he's going to carry Saratoga. I mean, he's going to carry these counties. Columbia, he could get real close in. Dutchess, he's going to carry. He's going to, and by the way, so is Molinaro. Ulster is a big Democratic area. That's from what I saw in New York 19. I wouldn't be surprised if that area didn't shift all that much. But here's the deal. In everyone's polling, and Spectrum News did some polling, which was done by Siano, the same people Nate contracts with. Even they were showing that Zeldin was running significantly ahead of congressional Republican candidates. So, I mean, man, it was stunning.
History of New York vote. Governor is one of those things that can split in the sense that you can, exactly. And I mean, upstate New York's always, it's really, can you make enough headroads into the city, or do you get so crushed that the upstate doesn't help you recover?
You know, I'm a little bit surprised, though, that Andrew's one thing you could see from the primary vote. What date was the New York primary on? Can anybody in the chat throw that out at me real quick? Because if so, then I can really show you something to illuminate something here for you, which is that you could see the love for the Giuliani still in the 5 boroughs in that primary. Zeldin beat him because he won upstate, and he crushed it in Nassau and in neighboring he crushed it in Nassau and neighboring Suffolk, of course, where he comes from. But Andrew won all of this, all of it. And yeah, Richmond is Republican too still, of course. But he won all of this. And the numbers were like half the presidential vote, Robert. Like, it was big. So the love for the Giuliani name, despite what they ran Rudy through, it was still there and it was still real. So I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't at least cut a short ad from Rudy, to send on radio Q104.3, Hot 97, these radio companies. And you might have guessed, I used to live there for a very long time, so I know all these. But, Pix 11, they could run ads on these TV and radio stations saying, it's Rudy, remember how, New York City was the promised land when I was the mayor, but the liberals have run it into the ground. You trusted me once to get it back. I did. I handed you off a golden egg. They wrecked it, and you gotta hire Lee Zeldin. You gotta vote for Lee Zeldin to get it back to reinstate New York's beauty, because there is something about New Yorkers. They did have a pride about them, even liberals. They had this pride during the era of Giuliani and even Bloomberg, when they were like, you know what? We took back this city. This is our beautiful city. So they'll dump a Democrat's ass for this, Robert. They will. They will. And that's why they're trying to tie Zeldin. He's a Trump MAGA extremist, because that's the only thing you can do there to turn those kinds of voters off. They just, they watch MSNBC, folks. What can I tell you? They think Paul Pelosi's attack is like the worst thing ever, but don't care that Steve Scalise was shot because some nutcase was lied to that Donald Trump was a traitor who colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the election. They just don't see it like normal people would see it. But it's real. It's definitely real, Robert.
And so what do you think the chances are for Mastriano in Pennsylvania?
Going back to our little model here, he fell because, again, it's a matter of how much are you on the air. He's got about 35% chance.
Such an expensive media state. He'll have to win without
so expensive. Tri-state area,
hardly any TV.
Yeah, and it's 35%. And what we saw with this poll, Trump's lead, let me pull it up. Trump's lead came down a little bit, but it's still super solid and well within. You remember the history of us polling Pennsylvania going back to 2016. Yep. I have never found a race more than 2 points. They're close. So Trump's lead is still solid. It was 7. And this is interesting. Let's look at the leaners first. It was 7 last time we polled it. all we saw happen, because the people are more interested. Democrats came home to Joe Biden a little bit, but he's just under 44. So Trump's lead is really solid. He's doing as well as he usually does in Philadelphia and Allegheny. It's this like massive swing. He's doing better in the Southeast than he did last time. He's not getting totally murdered there, but he's leading in Dutch. He's doing much better in the Northeast than he was in 2020. Obviously killing it in Central Pennsylvania and in Western Pennsylvania. He would carry Erie County. So that's there's a big difference. Look at
where is
Mastriano?
Is there a specific
let me show you the
place Mastriano's fallen behind?
Yes, there is. So if you compare Doug Mastriano
because my guess
Donald
would
Trump,
be that it's the most TV sensitive areas is where he has the worst.
It
gap.
is. Look at the difference as this thing loads up. Let me refresh it. I may have to refresh it. Yeah. So here, let's look at Oz first. And then you'll see, because you'll see Oz was pretty close to Trump. He's up by 2, but you can see Oz, he's doing all right in Philadelphia, but that's not terrible. Doing pretty damn good in Allegheny, doing really good in the West, almost 60%, Central 58. Dutch got a small lead there, even though I know it's going to be bigger than that. In the Northeast, he's got a lead, but it's not 7 like Trump's, it's 4. And in the Southeast, he's at 39.4, where Fetterman's only at 56.5. Watch this. Watch the Southeast and watch Allegheny County, okay? 2 big media markets. Mastriano falls to 33. Shapiro's over 60, just over 60. And then in Allegheny, Doug
so his inability to get on the air and his inability to get on the air in the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh markets is what's hurting.
It is. And the
only question is, do those people just vote R when they walk into the election ballot?
That's the kicker, because if you look by age,
Shapiro was up didn't they say he was up by 14 in 2020, won by 4?
Yeah.
So he has a specific history of overstating his support for the Attorney General's race.
Without a doubt. And here, this is crazy. Look at how close 18 to 24 year voters are with Mastriano. Shapiro is leading by what is that, 7? It's not much. Look at the 25 to 29. Shapiro's leading by 6, not much. And then 30 to 39, is a little bit shocking. It's 4 points for Shapiro. That's when it really starts to break to Oz and Trump. It doesn't for Shapiro, but then skip over all that. He's doing good with the 40 to 64s, biggest group in the electorate. So, especially the 50 to 64. But seniors, he's actually losing, and that's not the case. Oz is too, but it's much closer. See that?
Right.
And then it's weird because Oz is getting killed with youngers.
It's the people who watch the most TV.
Yeah. That's right.
Especially who watch network TV.
That's exactly, yeah, like Fox News.
The local news, the nightly news. Yeah. They watch the Weather Channel. They're watching Jeopardy. It's where we used to spend all our TV budget. We found the old people.
That's right, man.
It was like Wheel of Fortune, it was stuff like that.
That's right. Now you're totally spot on. You're completely spot on. And that is what the impact of money can do. And people would say, well, Trump didn't spend any money in Pennsylvania in 2016. He didn't, but he's Donald Trump.
It's a presidential race. The governor's race doesn't get anywhere near the same attention that a presidential race does.
There's also a cop we spoke to in Philly. Oh, go ahead.
I would say Mastriano is also not a well-known state candidate. This is his first time running statewide, right?
It is. He's a state senator. That's about the impact of his base. I actually think he's going to kill it in some areas in the Northeast. I do. It's just that out west, you cannot fall into the low 30s in Allegheny. You can't. Yeah. You just can't do it. I know, by the way, Oz's internals have him doing extremely well in Allegheny. We had him at one night, dude. He was at like 44%. I was like, wow. And by the way, Trump was right there with him. Mastriano was down.
What do you have for the Michigan governor's race?
Yeah, that's something we don't have our own polling with. Let's pull it up, though. That one is pure coin toss because I don't believe the Detroit Metro News. It's that simple. There are some polls that have almost no weight at all in the model because they repeatedly suck. Now Matt is much better at polling Michigan. He just dropped the poll that shows it's a tie. Tudor Dixon got an infusion of cash. She's getting some help from Trump. And I've seen some district level polling of how she's performing in Western Michigan in battleground districts, 2 specifically, 3 in the one with James. What's James? 8 now, the new 8,
I
I
think it's
think.
8.
Yeah. So she was actually doing very, very well there. So I'm looking at like how she's doing in Grand Rapids, and I'm thinking, and I saw how she was doing in Monroe and Macomb, which was well. She was doing well. Now she's getting killed in Oakland, but I think that's going to be the pattern for Republicans for the foreseeable future. Oakland is not what it used to be, So the idea that things are going to people are going to vote the way they voted for what was his name, McCall, when he used to represent that area, those days are over. I mean, it's just so white post grad over there. That's about all. That's about the only place where you will find those people in the state of Michigan. So it's really tough. I actually think Tudor Dixon has a really good shot of pulling off an upset. I do. And it would be an upset only because of how, this race is being portrayed. And again, this is like thing of believing these same pollsters, Robert, over and over
in
again.
Michigan, using that same national environment. It was what +2, +3 Biden in 2020?
Yeah, +2.
So +2. So in an R+4 environment, then that means that would be an R+6 environment for Michigan.
Yep.
And so in an R+6 environment against a governor that has a lot of legacy baggage from all the lockdowns, which is the same in Maine, same in Minnesota, same in Oregon, I think that we're going to see some surprises in at least some of these states.
Yeah, here's Michigan and the voter file analysis we ran, and we were supposed to get out Pennsylvania today, but it's kooky, man. You know what it is. A lot of people are hitting the database, so it's slowed up, and I couldn't get this view. The PDF itself is done, but I always like to add a few images when we put them out there so people can see the bird's eye view. Michigan actually got 2 points more Republican since 2020. So, there's no registration by party. So that's all inference modeling, and it's pretty damn accurate, but more to the point, I'm always looking at the trend. And in 2020, it was about R+2, just under R+2. The electorate actually turned out to be one exit poll showed it was tied. Another one showed it was R1. And then the Roper one chart showed R2. So it makes sense. And now, Michigan could be R4. And Robert, all of these polls, and by the way, their early vote sucks too for Democrats. Sucks. All right. So all of these polls are modeling D+ environments. Look at them, except for Matt's. Matt is not modeling a D+. It is, but it's only like D+1 or something. Tudor Dixon's carrying the independents. Biden had a pro-Republican electorate, but he carried independents by a margin similar to the one that Trump carried them over Hillary. And it just kind of flipped. And I argued that it didn't really flip. Those independents that voted for Trump just were cannibalized as Republicans. And the next time you asked them what they were, an exit pollster, anybody, they just told you Republican, right? So it's just a different independent electorate. But this time, if Tudor really is getting 90+ of her base, which polls show she is, and she's carrying independents, then the only way you can possibly get this Gretchen Whitmer +6 to 8 lead is if you have a D+ a lot, sampling that you're modeling a heavily D electorate. That's not going to happen, Robert. I just don't know what planet these people are living on. That's not going to happen. And by the way, Florida is safe. Oh, yeah. Solidly Republican. Yeah, and Kemp is up to 85% likelihood. 85.
Agreed. What are your thoughts on the Minnesota governor's race?
This one still is tilting. It's 57% Democrat, and
so that leans Democrat, but not a lot. Like I think Jensen is
not
at
a lot.
3-1 or 4-1 in some polls, 5-1 in some polls.
The Survey USA poll just came out that showed
in the betting market,
Ellison losing. Oh, right. But they're looking at stuff like that because it's for a TV.
Well, you see, the AG
local outlet.
The AG is losing in a poll. You see that?
That's Keith Ellison. Yeah, he's down.
Yeah.
But it's weird because the Minnesota Post and Robert Cahaley from Trafalgar, 2 others outside of Survey USA that I noticed RCP isn't even putting Survey USA in the aggregate at this point. Maybe they'll get around to it, but I've noticed several polls from Survey USA who have not performed well, not even going in the aggregate. And they're the only ones who show a big disparity between the governor and the attorney general race. Nobody else did. The Minnesota Post only found Jensen down by a few points. and they had Ellison basically gearing up to lose. Trafalgar, they have it like separated by what, 2 points, something like that. So
Yep.
I don't know that they're going to listen. I've told people a month or two ago when they mocked Robert for that poll, Ellison's going to lose. He's not popular, and in a D+8 environment, he's still only won by 4 points. That's
Right.
it. So he's done. He's
In
going
Minnesota,
down, man.
what was it? Biden by 7, Biden by something like that?
We overstated Biden. I think we had it Biden by 9 or 10, and he won by 7. Oh, I still got it up. Let's take a look. So Biden won Minnesota by 7, almost 7.1 basically. He won Minnesota, and our poll had him up. We overstated Biden's support in that state.
Right. So in an R+4 environment, that means Minnesota's an R+1. It's an R+1 environment relative to 2020. So that means Jensen's clearly a live dog. Now, was he able to raise money?
That's the thing. He doesn't have a whole lot of money. He's not in Doug Mastriano's boat. And it's also the case that Doug has the tri-state media market to contend with. He has the Twin Cities, but you can still go make a play for the Iron Range and other areas without spending a ton of money. And by the way, I know I'm intimately familiar. We had the guy on the show one day, intimately familiar with how Jensen is courting labor all around this place. And it's different. It's just a different animal. So man, he's in the hunt, man. He is. I just don't believe that Survey USA poll at all. Not at all. I'm sorry. I don't mean to outwardly dismiss him, but I'm dismissing it. Well, if it's a choice between both the Minnesota Post, who has polled their state before, I know their work, and Robert Cahaley, who along with me was the only one who tried telling people Minnesota was close in 16. Everybody else, Survey USA had Hillary Clinton winning handily. And we were the only poll that had Hillary's lead under 3 points. It was like 2.6, something like that. She won by 2.4, 2.2. We were right on the money. Nobody else was. It was Clinton plus really 11, plus 14.
I think he's going to do well in the rural areas. I think he'll do fine in the Iron Range. It'll be interesting to follow the Iron Range, but it's can he make some comeback in the Twin Cities and not just get totally crushed?
Yeah, that's really. If we look at. Let's remove that, put up, come on, get off. If we remove that and put up the 2020 vote, very different than 2016, that's for damn sure. But we'll be able to see where Trump just couldn't, he couldn't compete because it was just way too many votes. Hennepin, he got killed. There's 330,000 net vote for Biden out of that. Trump was at 27.4%. Jensen's got to do better here. Dakota, even Trump did actually, I think, better than people expected he would do. Washington, same. But then you have Ramsey, where between that and Hennepin, if you're in 26,
it's entirely the Twin Cities. If he can just run into the 30s in the Twin Cities,
in the 30s, right? Because you look, Olmsted. I was a little shocked by this result in 2016. In 2020, because Trump had won, and Winona to the east, Trump had won it in 2016. At Olmsted, I thought would get closer because of the Trumpist-like candidates that were running in that district. They were doing better and better every year. Even if Trump won this area, the district that makes up Minnesota won, he won it by 10 points. He outperformed the Republican congressional candidate, but he lost Olmsted by like 11 points, which was stunning to me. I didn't think that was going to happen. He's got to do better, obviously. In Olmsted, there's a lot of stuff. But again, folks, this is why I point out the stuff the NBC News poll is saying, the stuff that we found in the generic ballot. This is where that suburban woman, that's where that matters. Because of Robert's saying get into the 30s and Hennepin and Ramsey.
The problem of schools, the problem of inflation. This is where it could come home to roost.
That's right.
And they thought they could win that voter back with abortion, and they just never have been single issue abortion voters, that group.
No, they're not. No, they were, the kind of
Dave Portnoy is your single issue abortion voter.
You remember them? You remember? Yeah, right. No kidding. And he's a guy. He's actually the textbook.
It's the guy who needs to get like 8 abortions. Yes. The dude needs that. He pretends that it's about a woman's right to choose when it's really about his right not to want to raise a kid. That's all it is. Right not to pay child support.
Bullshit argument. Pardon my friend.
No, he doesn't want to write that check. That's what he doesn't want to write.
He doesn't want to write the check, Robert.
He could be like that guy in Iowa who had like 23 kids because he figured out at number 12, it caps out at 50%.
I'm telling you. And just up here, the Iron Range will be interesting because outside of Cook, which is still very Democratic, there's less than 4,000 votes there in a presidential election, but it's still just so labor and Democratic. Outside of Cook, late.
When is the Iron Range going to flip? That's always been because I mean, at least finally,
when he 24, if it's Trump,
Youngstown and Eastern Ohio and Western PA and what they used to call Black Country because of coal country, steel, and all the way up to that region, finally flipped. I thought the Iron Range would flip in 2020. It didn't. I'm curious when it finally flips.
I honestly think if it is Trump in 2024 with the numbers we're seeing now with him, he probably can do it. He'll probably, maybe not St. Louis, but he'll definitely get Lake. He'll get Carlton, and he'll tighten St. Louis considerably. I mean, actually, if you take just a generic what we see for Trump, he loses less than 2% of people who said they voted for him in 2020 say they would not vote for him. They would vote for the Democratic candidate. If it's Joe Biden or another Democrat, if they said they voted for Joe Biden, they lose between 8 and 12%. So if we average, and sometimes it's more, it's upwards of 15, but let's just be, cautious here. Take the mean, let's say 10%. Let's be conservative. Then that's 6 points off the top right there, Robert. That gets St. Louis damn near to a tie. Really. And if that happens, you could just say that the Iron Range has essentially flipped. It essentially did, because that means Carlton's gone. For sure. They lost Carlton, and they definitely lost Lake. Definitely. So,
if it gets into like R+7, R+8 kind of range, then these states all start to fall. That's when you get the landslide effect.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. If it comes down to those women, Robert, then forget about Minnesota 1, Minnesota 2. This is all going to go. This is all going to go. That woman factor.
I've been betting on the Republican in the Kansas governor's race for a while now, just because of the lean of the state. What do you have it as?
Yeah, we have it at a 62%.
Kansas is still a toss-up in a lot of betting markets.
Yeah, we have it at 62% Republican. 62%. I'll tell you what. I'd be stunned, Robert. I would really. There's always, as well as I do, watching this stuff for as long as we have, there is always a surprise. But some of this stuff fueling the Democratic candidate has been, first of all, she won in kind of an upset before. But there's only been one public poll that was in mid-September, when it was still this notion that Democrats could not lose the House, and they're doing so well because of Dobbs.
Just 3 weeks ago, the New York Times was saying that.
That's right. And she was only up by two, and she was at 45%. So that's nothing. Now things have changed quite a bit. And I know that Democrats have been pushing all of their polling that shows her up by 1, up by 4, up by the folks.
Well, she was
only up by 2 in September. 15th?
Them winning on that abortion issue might have negated. They should have, it might have negated their turnout edge.
It backfired.
Yeah, exactly. For this governor's race.
This is, and just so people understand how crummy these Fox polls are, they have Michaels up by 1 in Wisconsin. They have Johnson up by 2.
For the question of people saying, what about the risk of election fornication? The thing is, you need massive mail-in balloting for that to have the quantity of impact. And the problem is Democrats aren't getting it. That's the simple problem. The best way to pad the ballot box is with mail-in balloting. This has been established. Carter admitted this with Baker all the way back in 2004 and 2005 in their joint report. This has been known for forever. The New York Times admitted it in 2012 when they thought Romney was going to do it to counteract their enthusiasm problem against Obama. They need it. And they're at some states, they're at 10% of the rate of 2020. So they're just not getting the mail-in ballot quantity they need to be able to have the election fornication of 2020 repeat in 2022. Particularly if it was going to show up, it would show up in states like Nevada, right? Democrats control the entire election machinery here. It's not happening. That's the problem. They were pretending that maybe somebody left all the ballots at the post office, not there. like they magically showed up in 2020. They're not there now. So that their ability to pull this off, this was always going to be hard to pull off a second time. They needed the pandemic. They needed a lot of unique factors. They needed the Trump factor. They needed Republicans asleep and conservatives asleep. They don't have that. I mean, and there's been election law changes in Wisconsin and Arizona and Georgia. There was a good decision, I think, out of Pennsylvania today.
I was going to ask you that.
I
wanted to pull that up.
Right?
Yeah, I wanted to pull that up. Jonathan, just to say, why isn't the phenomenon in New York translating in California? Different, very, very different situations. The crime issue hasn't been pushed.
Why is Biden campaigning in Florida? They're now trying to send him to states where they're going to lose anyway. That's why.
Yeah.
They're sending Kamala Harris to like Massachusetts, or a state they're guaranteed to win or they're guaranteed to lose because they know they're negative tipping factors. They probably shouldn't have sent Kamala to Oregon or Washington. Where that's still
because
tight.
she plays right into that. She plays right into why they're voting against Democrats. She was pivotal, right in with the BLM. If you remember, the campaign was actually bailing people out. I mean, it was really stupid. Yeah, I'll read this though, and then we'll get back to some of your questions.
So this is a U.S. Supreme Court decision today, right?
This was no, I think it was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Yep, in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and liberal. But this is what's her name? You know her, I know her.
Harmeet Dillon, yes.
Harmeet Dillon. All right. They filed this on behalf of Citizens United, citing prior precedent, and because the state was just going to ignore the Supreme Court's ruling. And it says, and now, this first day of November 2022, upon review of the briefs of the parties and the amici, the petitioner's request for injunctive and declaratory relief is granted in part and denied in part. The Pennsylvania County Board of Elections are hereby ordered to refrain from counting any absentee and mail-in ballots received for the November 8th, 2022 general election that are contained in undated or incorrectly dated outer envelopes. The court is evenly divided on the issue of whether failing to count such ballots violates.
You got to give Democrats credit. It's like, how do we get late counted ballots? How do we get ballots that we send in a couple of days late? We just won't date them.
There's incredible. I mean, Robert, they're saying that the court themselves, they were evenly split on whether failing to count such ballots violates 52 USC. The Supreme Court already dealt with this. And yet they're saying, well, we're not really sure. And so they're ordered to segregate these ballots and preserve them because in the event there's a challenge. So expect Democrats to run back to a court. If Republicans were smart, they would immediately take
but at least they won't be counted. The biggest problem was if they got mixed in, were counted, and you couldn't uncount them.
Because then you can't unseparate them. Yeah. And
so the key was segregate them. U.S. Supreme Court will rule the same way next time around.
Yeah, but
I don't think Trump will announce until after New Year's is my current thought process.
If Fetterman is trailing, and that was for toast. If Fetterman is trailing, Robert, they're going to sue to, Mark Elias.
There'll be litigation in all these places, but some of the gaps may be too big. Where we call it the margin of fraud. You're
beyond the margin of fraud.
When your gap is 2 points or more, that doesn't get you anywhere. You need it close for anything like that to try to get in. What do you have New Mexico as? I think for Alaska, I have Murkowski as a 1 in 3 chance of losing. I don't know what you think. I mean,
that's about we're at a little over. We're a little better than that, but
then that's a good close bet for people because Murkowski is at 80% or more predicted. For example,
the governor's race is 85 for us. So, I mean, we think that's pretty much locked down. New Mexico, people may notice, is not on the map right now because it is being reevaluated. New Mexico, we do believe, is in fact a toss-up. It is going to lean slightly Democratic.
Because you said, the Libertarian dude endorsed the Democrat? Is that right?
Yeah. What's his name? Gary Johnson. Did he? I thought he endorsed Mark Ronchetti. Thought he endorsed.
He endorsed the Republic. Who did he endorse?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He endorsed Ron, and since he had, Grissom's lead fell from 8 points to 2 points. Trafalgar actually has Ronchetti up by 1, and the Hill for Emerson College.
Biden win New Mexico by? I thought it was only like 8 or 10.
He won New Mexico. I thought I had that right up there, but that's okay. I got it right here. He won it significantly. No, he won it by like 11.
11. So in this environment, this would be a D+2, D+3 environment, but you have the big popular libertarian former governor endorsing the Republican might help.
And she's not popular. The
Right.
Democrat is not popular. The polls are not good. In the
She's one of
Emerson
those
College poll
three-name
that just
people,
came out,
isn't she like one of those? She has 3 names instead of just it's like one of those
she's
hyphenated last names or something.
Because she's a white. She looks white, and she's like her middle name's Lujan, her last name's Grissom. So it's like she's trying to hyphenate it to make her sound, I think, more ethnic.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Come on, that's exactly what it is, right? Here's what's going for her though. So the last poll for Emerson had it's 2 points. So 49. She's at 49, but I think it's like if you do extremely likely to vote. I don't know why they took this metric, but extremely likely to vote, it does get her to 50. But there was something here that jumped out at me. She just wasn't super popular, and by district, some districts she was at bare majorities in the first and the second. Yeah, it was the first and the third. Excuse me. She's at 51. So I mean, Robert, if she underperforms just a little bit in some of those districts, it could be a real problem for her. It still will be slightly Democrat favored, but the rating will reflect the fact that she is not at all in a strong incumbent position. It's just given she's on the, like Robert just said, she's on the border. Looking at if this is like a 10-point swing, she's on the border. Now, in New Jersey, in Virginia, we saw a 12-point swing. In New Jersey, we saw a 14-point swing. So, I mean, it varies. It's not going to be on the money, in every single race. So you got to try to, like Robert said, it's borderline.
And New Mexico could be sensitive to. You got old Mexican Americans, so you got immigration issues. You got oil in a big part of the state that may be sensitive to the Biden administration's hostility to that. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that and then it's battling all the lefties in Santa Fe and wherever.
Albuquerque, Santa Fe,
yeah. Now what the other 2 races I was interested is the Oregon governor's race and the Washington Senate race.
Yeah, so let's pull up the governor's race first, because I think people are going to be a little bit shocked at what we got here. All right. So we have Oregon absolutely falling. So we have Drazen slightly favored in Oregon now, 54%. Let me show you, though, this is one race where I may actually be understating the Democrats. I may be understating their chances of being defeated, is what I'm saying. She hasn't led, the Democrat has not led in a single public poll in a very long time. So let me remove this, stop this one, put this one up. I mean,
and who is the third party candidate that's running that's getting a lot of votes there?
So their name is Johnson as well, not to be confused with Gary Johnson. But that's the thing. We were crunching some numbers here, and you can see for quite a while in the modern polling, anywhere between 12 and 7% for the independent, but there has been upwards of 21% support. So it allows Drazen to be able to win this race, Robert, with like 42%. It is absolutely doable. And she's polled above that. So Drazen's polled upwards of 44. So, it really does show you, it gives you an idea that, that this is doable. And I think it's more than doable. I think at this point we have to acknowledge that Drazen is favored to win this race. And there is this, again, this suburban woman thing, guys. So outside of Portland, where they're going to be vehement leftists, they're going to want to, that are going to want to vote Democrat no matter what. They may even agree with the Antifa autonomous zone. But then you have those upper yuppie whites that have been voting Democrat. These are the people who are swinging away from Democrats right now. And they can't have
crime,
that.
because of schools, because of inflation, because of the sense of chaos.
Closing the schools and the kids. Yeah. Oregon was really bad with that, Robert. Really bad.
Oh, yeah. This is a governor that was a big lockdown governor, vaccine mandate governor.
Big.
So and now Washington, how was Washington +10 for Biden, +9 for Biden? What was Washington in 2020?
Washington it's more than that. Washington was +20.
Whoa.
Oregon was +16, but Washington was +20. But here's the deal. I mean, and I know we've talked about this a lot. Two-party primary vote share, like I said, it may not be a universal 10 or 12-point swing. There will be states where that swing is significantly more. And in the state of Washington, it would have to be. But Patty Murray only got 52% of the two-party primary vote share. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is bad. And Republicans, they have some serious races they care about there. Washington 3. Washington 4. All right. So these are going to be races, even though Dan Newhouse was an impeacher, these are going to be races where, again, those suburban women will be like, you know what? I could vote for Newhouse. I'll do it. And by the way, while I'm here, maybe I'll vote for Smiley. I kind of like that. She's not MAGA, but she's good fit for that state. She's a really good fit for that state. In fact, can I get a picture here of the two of them? And I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be funny here, guys. I'm just simply saying, like Robert said before, if you don't think looks matter in politics, you're crazy. And Tiffany Smiley looks like them. Okay. Let me see if I could pull up side by side here. Here's RCP. They do it side by side.
Wow. If it's Norman Mailer's
it's a positive. It's a very positive. Smiley. Yeah, it's a very positive thing here, man. Smiley. And let's zoom in.
Oh yeah. Whereas like Patty Murray looks like Nurse Ratched.
Yeah, man. And Tiffany Smiley's pretty. She's not,
pretty's always good.
I mean, pretty's always good. I mean, she's easy on the eyes. All right. And she's not a bomb thrower at all. And that doesn't work in the Pacific Northwest. It doesn't. And Joe, that's part of the reason why Joe Kent, is some polls show, he's ahead, but he's not ahead by much. I think in the end, Washington 3 is very blue collar. Kent is going to be just fine. Talk about two-party vote share there. I can't even – and now he's got Tulsi stumping for him and cutting ads for him. She's like, look, if you're not a warmonger, if you're not pro-war, if you're not, then your guy is Joe Kent. I mean, and again,
Gabbard's
talk about not being –
Gabbard's hit the road for a bunch of Republicans, has brought out good audiences, and we've seen the anti-war left show up finally. They're now trolling and showing up at Barack Obama's events. They're showing up at Ilhan Omar's events. They're showing up at AOC's events. They're getting into the news. They're getting covered in social media that Democrats are now the pro-war party. So I think that's where I think people underestimated the potential impact that Gabbard could have at helping tip some of those voter groups over and some of the issues over in Republican favor. So so by that analysis, a couple of good bets would be the Republicans to have 54 or more Senate seats, because that would be, they just need to pick up.
It is possible. Yes,
New Hampshire
absolutely.
or Washington, and they get to that 54 number, with Arizona, Georgia holding Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, but adding Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. And then on the governorship, 31.
RCP's at 54, brother. They're at RCP.
Well,
they're at 54.
You could put governors at 32 or more, given the potential to add either Maine or Michigan or Minnesota, along with likely picking up Oregon, likely picking up Wisconsin, and holding Arizona, Ohio, Florida, Georgia, etc. So there's one other governor's seat that I'm forgetting. Someone asked whether they had any information on Massachusetts, but I haven't tracked Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, we don't think that's serious. We think that's a Dem flip. Yeah.
All right. So
and so is Maryland, by the way. But Illinois, okay.
You think Illinois maybe has a shot?
I
would love to see Pritzker lose. I got litigation concerning the Pritzker family at the moment, or the company they helped find, known as Hyatt.
Right. He's got a deficit with independents before this shift that we have seen. And I have seen Bailey's internals. It's closer than the public polling. And I believe him, because that pollster who's doing his polling also did internals for Citarelli in New Jersey. They laughed at him when they said that race was close. He was the only other one outside of Robert that showed that race was close.
it would be part of a pattern. Incumbent governors in New York, incumbent governors in Oregon in trouble because suburban voters unhappy with crime and domestic politics and lockdown politics. Same to some degree with Whitmer in Michigan. I mean, that's where Shapiro gets to dodge a bullet because he wasn't governor while all the lockdowns happened. He was AG. But but that's where a state like Illinois could be closer than people think. So I'll have all my bets or picks up at sportspicks.locals.com, but I'll go ahead and give out some of the best bets. Arizona Senate to go Republican, Masters to win. Georgia Senate to go Republican for Walker to win. Those are anywhere between underdogs and 55-60%, depending on where you get them in the odds markets. GOP to win the House, GOP to win the Senate, at least 53 Senate seats, at least 31 governorships. Both of those, by the way, are trading at 50% or less. I think the closest Senate race may be Nevada rather than some of the other states. I mean, a lot of people have Arizona or Georgia. I think it might end up being Nevada if the environment is the way I think it is.
What about New Hampshire? If Baldak ekes it out, it could be New Hampshire.
Or New Hampshire. Yeah, you're right. New Hampshire would probably be another good one to take a look at. I like the Michigan and Maine governor long shot underdog odds. They're 2-1, 3-1, as much as 8-1, depending on where you get it. And I like obviously Pennsylvania. I like there at Polymarket. You can pick Bet Mastriano at 11-1 odds. So I think he's worth 11-1 odds. I think that he's a viable long shot. I think he's an out. I think he probably should be a 2-1 underdog, not 11-1 underdog.
Me too.
Same with Oregon. I like the Oregon governor's odds, the Kansas governor's odds, the Wisconsin governor's odds. Some of those places you can get those at even money still.
Oklahoma's going Republican, guys. The governor's race,
if you
have
not
not moved that. Take that stit crap and stick the stit. Where he's going. He's going to beat Hofmeister. All right, that's an area.
Agreed.
I know some people got freaked with the polls there showing Hofmeister up. That's not going to happen.
No, not in this election cycle. GOP majority to be over 35.5 seats. That's one of the odds that's out there available. Democrats to be under 200 seats. That's even money still, which is kind of interesting. Under 190. You get better than 2 to.
That's so possible, Robert. That's nuts.
Well, you get better than 2-1 odds that they are under 190, and that just puts Republicans around 246, 247. So I mean, that 248. That's a very manageable number. Under the circle, definitely not. That should be even money, not 2-1 odds. I like Iowa's Grassley. I like his margin to reach double digits. The current margin of victory on him is 9.5. I think it's going to be like 15, 16.
He's got the 99 strategy and has for years, I think that
old man, he's going to die in office. I mean, that's just Grassley.
Did Seltzer redo her poll, Robert? Because I think that she must want to redo that poll. I mean, she must want to redo it.
Agreed. Especially
That's crazy to me.
Pretend to be the Iowa gold standard. At least Marquette got the message.
Kidding.
And shifted its polling in Wisconsin. And then I like
you want to peek at the Arizona before we go when you're done. You want to peek at the raw because it looks like we interviewed 327 tonight. So that's on top of 300 and roughly the same amount.
The Libertarian dropped out and endorsed Blake Masters in Arizona. So that was a nice little push for Masters. I like Lee to win by more than 7.5 in Utah. I don't think McMullen will end up getting much support at all. I think that's all been overrated all the way through.
Hyped,
And then these are all underdog seats for the House. Illinois 17 to go Republican, Kansas 3. Listen to this. What do you think the odds are?
Kansas 3.
That Kansas 3 goes Republican. What do you think? The betting market?
15 after that poll. 15
plus 350. Plus 350.
What?
That's your odds. Kansas 3, a Republican. That's all New York Times. The Maine 2, still even money or bigger underdog, depending on where you can get it. That goes Republican. Michigan 3, just a slight favorite that it goes Republican. I think it should be a strong favorite.
Me too. I don't want to say something.
And then New York 19 is even money. I lean that I like those odds still. I think 60% chance. But what do you think about New York 19?
I know that the internals, they show a close race, and he's like, look, don't take anything for granted. But I love Mark Molinaro's chances. All right.
Yeah, so do I.
He would have beaten Ryan if it wasn't a low turnout election, that Democrats had a structural advantage built in. It had nothing to do with Dobbs. All right. And such bull crap, these people. They're such gaslighters. Molinaro would have won that. His strength in Dutchess, it thoroughly impressed me. That was missing about 200,000 voters in that special election. It is a different district now, and he has a different opponent. And Riley is not even as strong, in my opinion, as Ryan. And every time he refers to him, he says DC insider Riley, and it's perfect. It's working. And by the way, again, with the kind of numbers we're seeing with these demographic shifts, that's a district that's going to be impacted significantly. And he's, the former top honcho in Dutchess County, which is an area Biden won. He carried it. So I just don't know where else Riley in this environment is going to have, they'll get the early vote, Robert, that they'll get, and it'll look nice. And then, when that normal vote comes in, I think Molinaro is going to swamp him. I do. I don't think it'll be a huge blowout, but it will be. I favor Molinaro to win that seat at this point. I really do.
So yeah, even money on those odds too. So those are the bets. You can find more of them at sportspicks.locals.com. So what do you have on Arizona?
Let's check it out right now. Let's peek at it, shall we? All right. Yeah. So it is, before we even show anything, let's go down to education. All right, so this is textbook night, okay? 8% with a high school degree. Textbook this is what it takes to reach the working class, okay? High school, some college or an associate's degree is carrying that, which, folks, if it was more high school, it would be even more Republican. Bachelor's degree, 34%, and a graduate or postgraduate, 27.9%. Understand the state of Arizona is only 40% college 4-year degree or higher. All right. The post-grad will be maybe 17 to 15, something like that. So they're like double overstated here. This is going to be interesting. I want to just show by party real quick because, Robert, I don't want to give anything away yet. By party, here we go. By party, I know.
I was just going to emphasize that on the Republican side, the reason why a lot of these polls have been wrong is they kept getting the Republican constituency wrong. They kept overpolling upscale Republicans. And they would say, hey,
you're talking about the primary polls. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, yeah. J.D. Vance. Perfect example. But this is registered, not identification. Registered by registration. This should be 33% Democrat, 37% Republican, and the rest independent. You will notice that roughly 5% of Democrats are refusing to identify as Democrats. You see where I highlighted that right there? This is why Rasmussen's poll in Arizona was like R+9. The registration only really supports R+4 or 5, but Democrats are not telling you they're Democrats. They're stuffing themselves in with independents, or some of them have flatly just changed their mind and will tell you they're a Republican. All right. So with all of that in mind, let's go up to the top. All right. That's the screen. So it wouldn't have any, it's not going to have any non-registered or unlikely voters. All right. Absentee ballot by mail, mail it in early, 67%. Vote by mail, drop it off on election day. This is going to cause a delay in the vote count in Arizona. This is ticking up again, and it has been for 2 nights. All right. So 15% are saying they're going to do it, the 2,000 mules thing. All right. You know why? I mean, part of it is the system caught them up. They don't want to mail it. They don't trust it. So they have no choice if they don't want to be forced to cast a provisional ballot. So even though the Republican Party in Arizona is telling them not to do it, they're telling us they have no choice, because if they don't, then what's going to happen is that basically they're going to be told to fill out a provisional ballot if they want to cast an election day vote. All right. So do you approve or disapprove Joe Biden? He's at like 42%. Mark Kelly is at 46.5. Blake Masters is at 49.8. Mark Victor was at 3% last night, and now he is at 1.8 tonight. And guess what? Blake Masters ticked up, and he is leading Mark Kelly in the raw. The generic ballot is R+6 or R+7 if you round, actually. Republican 51, Democrat 44. That was basically same thing last night, Robert. For governor, Kerry Lake by 7 in the raw. with a highly educated, and again, it's a small sample, but you could say that. I'm going to add the 300 and something we collected last night, and this is what it looked like last night. This is going to be a shock poll. Fincham is falling, and Fontes is rising. They've been whacking Mark Fincham badly. He had a lead. I don't think he's going to have a lead in this poll when this is done. I really don't. They spent a lot of money to go after him, and honestly, he makes it very easy for them. I was looking at his Twitter feed today, and I'm like, no wonder. I just don't know why he does this so close to an election. Why would you do that? Anyway, Hamadeh is up over Mays, 50-45. Treasurer, 53-42. Yee, Superintendent Public Instruction, 49-45. And this is Proposition 309. Do you intend to vote? What it does is remove the alternatives to 2 alternate IDs for election day voters. You must have your voter ID, your actual photo identification. You can't bring into like a utility bill or something that will end that. And then for vote by mail, it's not just signature verification. You must confirm your voter registration number. It's good. I mean, some of these, if it was me personally, I would vote yes. It looks like it's going to pass pretty overwhelmingly. Last night, it was at like 61. Now tonight it's at 58. So there are some people that are deciding, for no, but not really, not much. Big story here again is that the party ID is not all of that different. When we did this last time and we came out with a Lake plus 3.7 and Masters was down by 1. For instance, in the raw, Kerry Lake was, I think, down by like 1. And then when we waited for region, it hatched out some stuff with education, and then Kerry Lake took like a 3.7 lead. When I first looked at Matt's poll and Kerry Lake was up by like 11, I was like, no, dude. But I don't know, Robert. I don't want to speak too soon here, but she looks like Fox poll can stuff it. Kerry Lake by 1. What are they polling? Did you see the education breakdown? I mean, this is not. I mean, if she is doing this well with almost 30% post grad, dude, it means even those. What did you call those Republicans just a second ago? Those educated people that the primary polls were missing. If she's doing good with them, what are they called? What did you say they were?
Oh, well, I mean, it's your basic upscale kind of Republican voter. That's your mainline Philly kind of voter, your certain kind of Maricopa County voter. And she's doing well there, then it's going to be a big sweep. So now, do you know, I'm definitely going to have an open live chat on election night at Sports Picks to give out late breaking political bets and whatnot. Do you know where you're going to be on election night?
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you, hop on, make an appearance with me? I mean, we were talking about this briefly, we didn't have it all nailed down, but, we paid a fortune for the new results. So I was going to do I'll go and hop. I told Daily Wire and Bannon, all these guys, I'll go on, but you gotta, I'll go on 5 minutes at the top of the hour, but you gotta let me, promote my thing or something like that, because I think that's what we should do, Robert. I mean, it's not cheap, and people just are like, hey, can you come and join us over here? And it's like, sure. Then you get like media level election results and the election expert for free. Yeah, that sounds great for you. Not so good for me or my viewers. You know what I mean? So I was thinking, if we could hold the fort down, it would be a pretty entertaining show.
Oh, yeah.
Plus,
agreed.
I'm doing an exit poll for a certain state, and we'll have exit polls. So that would be cool, or at least for that state. So it'd be pretty cool, man. I think that's the way to go, brother.
Sounds good.
All right, my man. We went way over. I'll let you get out of here. Folks, we will see you soon. And don't miss tomorrow on Inside the Numbers, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Later, brother. See you soon. Don't forget to follow Robert at sportspicks.locals.com and me right there, People's Pundit.locals.com. We'll do maybe one more day of interviews in Arizona, maybe even not. I'll just look and make sure we have enough younger voters, and we'll go over it, and then we'll drop that final Arizona. All right. Nevada, it's just so much crunching to do. I was thinking we'll just throw out a slew of them, but I will tell you, we have Laxalt up. We have Lombardo up. In Wisconsin, we have Michaels up, but it's the reverse. We have Michaels up by slightly less. Not slightly less. He's up by less than Ron Johnson. It's looking like, a solid Johnson lead. And that gets us, I don't think we'll be able to do Pennsylvania again. We did put out the numbers for Walker. If you didn't check it out, we'll link to the crosstabs. But we do have Walker now back in the lead, and it doesn't really matter because Warnock is nowhere near 50%. I don't think Warnock is going to be able to bank 4 or 5 more points to ensure that he could get over 50 to avoid a runoff. Currently, we have Walker leading him anyway. So if he is forced into a runoff, he will lose. That will happen. Georgia incumbents do not survive if they're forced into runoffs. All right. I get other polls. I don't care. All right. So I just don't care. All right. So I'm going to leave it with that. We'll see you guys soon. I'm going to run the song. Don't miss tomorrow, noon Eastern Standard Time. We'll go over more polling in a lot more detail. All the best, folks. Thanks for watching. What are the odds?